Captain Lisa Martinez stepped off the transport shuttle and looked around the massive alien space station. The walls were made of dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing with a dull red light that hurt her eyes. The air smelled wrong, like burnt copper mixed with something she could not identify. Her team followed behind her in single file. Lieutenant Ben Harper carried their diplomatic gifts in a sealed container. Dr. Amy Chun held her translation device, checking it one more time before the meeting. Commander Rick Stone walked at the back, his hand resting on his sidearm. Even though this was supposed to be a peaceful mission, this was the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries. First contact with an alien species. The Jactar Empire had reached out to Earth 3 months ago with a message that simply said they wanted to meet. The message had been broadcast on every frequency imaginable, making it impossible to ignore. Earth's leaders had debated for weeks about how to respond. Some wanted to send scientists. Others suggested military leaders. In the end, they chose Captain Martinez because she had both military training and diplomatic experience. She had served in 3 different peace negotiations between Earth colonies, and had never failed to reach an agreement. The space station orbited a dead planet that had once been home to another species. The Jactar had chosen this location because it was neutral ground, or so they claimed. Martinez wondered what had happened to the original inhabitants but decided not to ask. Some questions were better left for later. A door opened in front of them with a hiss of escaping air. The corridor beyond was even darker than the docking bay. Strange creatures moved in the shadows, but Martinez could not get a good look at them. She heard clicking sounds and what might have been whispers in a language that sounded like grinding stone. They walked for what felt like hours through twisting corridors. The artificial gravity felt different here, slightly heavier than Earth. Normal, Martinez noticed that her team was breathing harder than usual. The air itself seemed thicker, more difficult to pull into their lungs. Finally, they reached a massive chamber with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. In the center of the room stood a table made of the same dark metal as the walls. On one side sat 3 chairs designed for humans. On the other side was something that could barely be called a chair. It looked more like a throne made of bones and black stone. Commander Vexthal was already waiting for them. The alien was enormous, nearly 3 meters tall and covered in scales that shifted color from dark green to black as he moved. His head was elongated, with 3 yellow eyes arranged in a triangle pattern. His mouth was filled with teeth that looked designed for tearing flesh rather than eating regular food. 2 massive arms ended in hands with 4 fingers each, and every finger ended in a curved claw that could probably cut through steel. He wore what appeared to be armor, made of the same bone-like material as his throne. Strange symbols covered the armor, and Martinez noticed that they seemed to move when she was not looking directly at them. Around his neck hung a necklace made of what looked like small skulls, though she hoped they were just decorative. Martinez approached the table slowly, keeping her movements calm and non-threatening. She had studied everything Earth scientists could learn about Jactar body language, but most of it was guesswork. The only thing they knew for certain was that direct eye contact was considered either a challenge or a sign of respect. Depending on the situation, she stopped at the human side of the table and waited. Her team took positions behind her, ready to assist if needed. The silence stretched on for several minutes before Commander Vexthal spoke. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together in a landslide. The translation device and Dr. Chion's hands struggled to process the alien language, producing crackling sounds and half-formed words before finally settling on understandable English. "You are the representatives of the species called humans," Vexthal said. It was not a question. "Yes," Martinez replied, keeping her voice steady. "I am Captain Lisa Martinez of the Earth vessel Horizon. We come in peace to establish diplomatic relations between our species." The alien's 3 eyes focused on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. She forced herself to maintain eye contact, remembering that showing fear would be interpreted as weakness. "Peace," Vexthal repeated the word as if tasting something unpleasant. Your species speaks of peace, but you know nothing of the galaxy you have entered. This sector of space belongs to the Jaktar Empire. We have ruled here for 3,000 of your years." Martinez nodded carefully. "We understand that your people have a long history in this region. Earth seeks only friendship and mutual cooperation. We have brought gifts as a sign of our good intentions." She gestured to Lieutenant Harper, who stepped forward and placed the container on the table. Inside were examples of human art, music, and literature, along with detailed information about Earth's culture and technology. The gifts had been chosen to show humanity's peaceful nature and creative spirit. Vexthal did not even look at the container. Instead, he leaned forward in his throne, his massive frame casting a shadow over the entire human delegation. "You misunderstand your situation," he said, his voice growing louder and more threatening. "The Jaktar Empire does not seek friendship with inferior species. We offer something far more valuable than cooperation. We offer you the chance to serve." The words hit Martinez like a physical blow. She had prepared for many possible outcomes of this meeting, but outright subjugation had not been one of them. Earth's intelligence services had analyzed the Jaktar's initial message and concluded that they were dealing with a relatively peaceful species, interested in trade and cultural exchange. "I'm afraid I don't understand," Martinez said, though. She was beginning to understand all too well. Vexthal stood up from his throne, his full height making him tower over the humans like a giant. The bone ornaments on his armor clicked together as he moved, creating a sound like wind chimes made of death. "Your species will submit to Jaktar rule," he declared. "You will provide workers for our factories, soldiers for our armies, and resources for our empire. In return, we will allow your species to continue existing. This is not a negotiation. This is an ultimatum." The chamber fell silent except for the quiet hum of the translation device. Martinez felt her team tense behind her, ready to fight if necessary, but she knew that violence would only make things worse. 4 humans with sidearms could not hope to defeat an entire alien empire. "Commander Vexthal," she said, choosing her words carefully, "surely we can find a solution that benefits both our species. Earth has much to offer as a trading partner and ally." The alien's eyes narrowed to slits. "You still do not understand. The Jaktar Empire has conquered 17 civilizations. Each one began by thinking they could negotiate as equals. Each one ended by begging for mercy. You are not special. You are not different. You are simply the next species to learn their place in the galaxy." He slammed his massive fist on the table with such force that the entire structure shook. The sound echoed through the chamber like a thunderclap. "Humans will kneel," he roared. Captain Martinez looked up at the towering alien commander. She thought about her home planet, about the billions of people who were depending on her to protect them. She thought about her crew, her family, and everyone she had ever sworn to defend. The fear was still there, but it was joined by something else now. Something that burned hotter than fear. She stood slowly, her brown eyes meeting all 3 of the alien's yellow ones. Her voice was quiet, but carried clearly through the chamber. "Kneel first." Commander Vexthal stood in the command center of his massive dreadnought. The Bone Crusher, staring at the holographic display showing the small blue planet called Earth, his 3 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he watched his fleet of 200 warships move into attack formation. The humans had made their choice, and now they would face the consequences. The alien commander's scaled fingers traced over the tactical display, marking targets on the human homeworld. He had done this 17 times before with other species, and the pattern was always the same. First came the defiant words, then the desperate attempts at negotiation, and finally the complete surrender when faced with overwhelming force. Sub-Commander Krikstal approached from behind, his own scales rippling with excitement. The younger alien's armor was decorated with trophies from previous conquests, small bones and metal fragments from the ships of defeated enemies. His voice carried the eager tone of a warrior ready for battle. "Commander, the fleet reports ready for the final assault. Our scouts have confirmed that Earth's defenses are primitive. They still use chemical rockets and simple kinetic weapons. Their largest warships are barely the size of our escort vessels. Vexthel nodded slowly, his attention focused on the intelligence reports floating before him. For 3 months, his surveillance teams had been monitoring human communications and studying their technology. What they found was exactly what he expected from a species that had just discovered faster-than-light travel. The humans had nuclear weapons, but those were useless in space combat. Their ships were slow and clumsy, designed for exploration rather than warfare. Their military seemed to be focused on fighting other humans rather than defending against alien invasion. Most importantly, they showed the same weakness that had doomed every other species the Jactar had encountered. "They are emotional creatures," Vexthel said, his voice carrying the contempt of a predator discussing prey. "They waste resources on the weak and injured. They refuse to sacrifice the few for the many. They actually believe that every individual life has value." Crixtol's mandibles clicked in amusement. The sound was the Jactar equivalent of laughter, though no human would have recognized it as such. "Their captain actually told you to kneel first. The translator must have malfunctioned. No inferior species would dare speak such words to a Jactar commander." "The translator was working perfectly," Vexthel replied, his eyes narrowing at the memory. "That female truly believes she could make demands of me. Such arrogance from a species that has never faced real warfare. They think courage and defiance can overcome superior technology and numbers." The command center hummed with activity as dozens of Jactar officers prepared for the assault. Their species had been bred for war over thousands of years, with genetic modifications that enhanced strength, speed, and tactical thinking. Each warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall and could tear through steel with their bare claws. Their weapons could vaporize entire city blocks, and their shields had never been breached by enemy fire. More importantly, the Jactar understood the true nature of warfare. They felt no mercy for enemies, no hesitation in the face of death, and no concern for individual survival when victory was at stake. They were the perfect soldiers, and they had proven it across 17 different star systems. "Display the previous conquests," Vexthel commanded, and the holographic projector filled with images of alien worlds under Jactar rule. Each planet told the same story of inevitable defeat. The Kethmer had been a proud warrior race with advanced energy weapons. They lasted 6 months before surrendering. The Veltari possessed powerful psychic abilities that could control minds and move objects with thought alone. They held out for almost a year before their leaders begged for mercy. The Zephyrians had built massive space fortresses and filled them with automated defense systems. Their resistance crumbled in just 3 weeks. Every species had something they believed made them special. Every species had been wrong. "What makes these humans think they can succeed where others failed?" Crixtol asked, studying the tactical readouts. "Their weapons are inferior, their ships are slow, and their numbers are small. A single Jactar warrior could defeat 10 of their best soldiers in personal combat." Vexthel's attention turned to the intercepted human communications his intelligence teams had been monitoring. The transmissions painted a picture of a species completely unprepared for the reality of galactic warfare. They spoke of peace, cooperation, and understanding as if these concepts had any meaning when facing an enemy determined to conquer them. "They have spent their entire history fighting among themselves," the commander explained. "Their largest conflicts involved primitive weapons in limited numbers. They have never faced an enemy with superior technology and unlimited resources. They do not understand what true warfare means." The intelligence reports showed human military forces scattered across dozens of worlds, each one focused on local threats rather than coordinated defense. Their command structure was fragmented, with different nations and colonies maintaining separate military forces. They had no unified strategy, no supreme commander, and no experience working together on a galactic scale. Even more telling were the human news broadcasts and entertainment media. They showed a species obsessed with individual heroism and moral victories. Their stories always ended with the good characters winning through courage and determination rather than superior firepower. They actually believed that being right was more important than being strong. Begin the assault, Vexthal ordered. Target their major population centers first? When they see their cities burning, their leaders will have no choice but to surrender. We will be generous in victory and allow their species to continue existing as our servants. The Bone Crusher's engines roared to life, followed by the rest of the massive fleet. 200 warships, each one capable of destroying entire planets, began their final approach to Earth. The journey would take 18 hours at maximum speed. Giving the humans just enough time to realize the futility of resistance, Vexthal settled into his command throne, confident that this would be the shortest conquest in Jaktar history. His tactical computers projected complete victory within 72 hours, with human casualties estimated at less than 1 billion. It was actually quite merciful by Jaktar standards. As the fleet entered the outer edge of the solar system, the first warning signals began reaching Earth. Vexthal watched with satisfaction as human ships scrambled to form defensive positions. Their vessels looked like toys compared to his massive dreadnoughts, barely large enough to carry effective weapons. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, "human vessels are moving to intercept us near their fourth planet. They appear to be trying to form a defensive line." Vexthal's mandibles clicked in amusement. "How many ships?" "Approximately 50 vessels of various sizes. Our scanners detect primitive armor and energy weapons. They pose no significant threat to our forces." The alien commander studied the human formation with professional interest. Their ships were arranged in a pattern that suggested some tactical knowledge, but their weapons were clearly designed for fighting other humans rather than superior alien technology. They were about to learn a very painful lesson about the difference between primitive warfare and true military power. "Reduce speed to half," Vexthal commanded. "Let them see the size of our fleet. Perhaps they will realize the futility of resistance and surrender before we are forced to destroy them." The massive Jaktar armada slowed its approach, giving the humans time to appreciate what they were facing. 200 ships, each one bristling with weapons that could crack planetary surfaces. The smallest Jaktar vessel was 3 times larger than the biggest human ship, and their shields could absorb damage that would vaporize entire human fleets. This was going to be easier than Vexthal had expected. General Alex Rodriguez stood in the deep underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching as red dots appeared on the massive holographic display. Each dot represented a Jaktar warship, and there were far more of them than Earth's intelligence services had predicted. The alien fleet stretched across space like a dark cloud, blocking out the stars as it approached the solar system. Admiral Kate Sullivan moved beside him, her fingers dancing across the control panel as she activated defense systems that had been hidden for decades. The two military leaders had worked together for 15 years, preparing for this exact moment. While the rest of humanity had hoped for peaceful contact with alien life, they had planned for war. "All stations report ready," Sullivan announced, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had trained for this moment her entire career. "Operation Prometheus is now active. All hidden assets are coming online." Rodriguez nodded, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. The Jaktar fleet was massive, but it was also moving in a predictable pattern. The aliens clearly expected no real resistance from humanity, and their overconfidence was about to become their first mistake. In a laboratory hidden beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Marcus Webb watched his life's work come to fruition. For 20 years, he had been developing quantum weapons under the cover of peaceful energy research. The scientific community believed he was working on clean power generation, but his real project was far more dangerous. The quantum disruptors were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They could tear apart matter at the subatomic level, creating chain reactions that would spread through any material they touched. More importantly, they were completely unpredictable to alien sensors that had never encountered such technology. "Quantum batteries are at full charge," Webb reported through his communicator. All weapon systems are ready for deployment. The aliens have no idea what they're about to face. On the moon, what appeared to be a peaceful research station was transforming into something entirely different. The solar collectors that had generated power for scientific experiments were rotating to reveal massive railguns capable of accelerating projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed. The communication arrays were actually targeting systems linked to weapons platforms hidden throughout the solar system. Colonel Amy Foster sat in the cockpit of her fighter, part of a squadron that had been secretly stationed on the dark side of the moon for the past 5 years. Her ship looked like a standard exploration vessel from the outside, but its interior was packed with adaptive AI systems that could learn and counter enemy tactics in real time. "Phoenix Squadron, this is Control," came the voice through her. "Helmet communicator, enemy fleet is approaching Mars orbit. You are cleared for first contact. Remember, your job is to gather intelligence and test their defenses. Do not engage in prolonged combat." Foster smiled grimly as she powered up her ship's engines. She had been waiting for this moment since joining the secret defense program. The Jactar thought they were dealing with primitive humans who had never faced real warfare. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison commanded the small fleet of ships that formed Earth's first line of defense. His vessels were positioned near Mars, spread out in what appeared to be a desperate attempt to block the alien advance. The Jactar would see exactly what they expected to see, a small group of human ships trying to protect their homeworld. With inferior technology, what the aliens could not detect were the modifications hidden within each human vessel. The ship's hulls contained layers of adaptive armor that could shift density and composition based on incoming weapons fire. Their engines had been redesigned to provide bursts of acceleration that defied the laws of physics as the Jactar understood them. Most importantly, each ship was equipped with quantum communicators that allowed instant coordination across any distance. While the Jactar relied on traditional radio signals that could be jammed or intercepted, the human fleet operated as a single organism with perfect information sharing. As the alien fleet approached, Morrison opened a channel to all his ships. "This is it, people. Everything we've trained for comes down to the next few hours. Remember, we're not trying to win this battle. We're trying to make them underestimate us while we learn everything we can about their capabilities." The Jactar dreadnoughts opened. Fire first, sending streams of plasma energy toward the human positions. The weapons were devastatingly powerful, each blast capable of vaporizing a city-sized area. But the human ships were no longer where the aliens expected them to be. Morrison's fleet had scattered the moment the enemy weapons fired, using their hidden acceleration systems to move in patterns that seemed impossible. The plasma beam struck empty space while the human ships regrouped in new positions, their adaptive armor already analyzing the alien weapons and preparing countermeasures. "All ships, initiate Swarm Pattern 7, Morrison commanded. "Let's show them what happens when they underestimate human creativity." The human vessels suddenly split into smaller groups, each one attacking from a different angle. Their weapons were different from anything the Jactar had encountered before. Instead of trying to overpower the alien shields with brute force, they used quantum disruptors that simply ignored conventional defense systems. The first Jactar ship to be hit simply stopped existing. The quantum beam struck its hull and began a chain reaction that spread through the entire vessel in seconds. The massive dreadnought, which had survived battles with 17 different species, crumbled into dust without even having time to send a distress signal. Commander Vexthal watched in shock as his fleet began taking casualties. This was not supposed to happen. Human weapons were primitive, their ships were slow, and their tactics were predictable. Yet somehow they were destroying vessels that had been considered invincible for 3,000 years. How is this possible? Crixtal demanded, his voice filled with disbelief. Our intelligence reports showed no advanced technology. These ships should not be able to penetrate our shields. Vexthal's 3 eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. The humans were using weapons that his sensors could not properly analyze, moving in patterns that defied standard tactical doctrine. and coordinating their attacks with a precision that suggested some form of instantaneous communication. They have been hiding their true capabilities, he realized. This entire species has been pretending to be primitive while secretly preparing for war. We have been deceived. The battle continued for 6 hours, with both sides learning hard lessons about their opponents. The Jacktar discovered that human ingenuity could overcome superior firepower, while the humans learned that alien technology was even more advanced than they had feared. When the fighting finally ended, the results were shocking. The Jacktar had lost 37 ships, including 3 heavy cruisers and 2 dreadnoughts. The humans had lost only 12 vessels, but each one had been evacuated before its destruction, with the crews rescued by other ships in the fleet. Morrison's voice crackled through the quantum communicators as his battered fleet regrouped. Mission accomplished. We have full tactical data on their weapons, shields, and ship designs. Intelligence reports are being transmitted to Earth Command now. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Jacktar Empire had been defeated in battle. The humans had not just survived their first encounter with superior alien technology, they had won. The small blue planet that had seemed so helpless was revealing itself to be something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. As news of the battle spread through both fleets, a new reality began to settle in. This was not going to be another quick conquest for the Jacktar Empire. Humanity had just announced its presence in the galaxy, and the message was clear: Earth would not kneel to anyone. The war had been raging for 3 months when the decisive battle began in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Captain Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge of her new command, the warship Defiance, watching as hundreds of ships from both sides prepared for what everyone knew would be the final confrontation. The Defiance was nothing like the diplomatic vessel she had commanded during first contact. This ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, built with every lesson learned from the previous battles. Its hull was made of adaptive materials that could shift their molecular structure to absorb different types of energy weapons. Its engines used quantum field manipulation to achieve speeds that made it nearly impossible to target. Most importantly, the ship was equipped with Project Prometheus, Earth's most classified weapon system. The artificial intelligence network could predict enemy movements, coordinate attacks across multiple vessels, and adapt to new threats faster than any biological mind could process information. Commander Vexthal approached the battlefield from the opposite direction, his massive fleet arranged in the traditional Jacktar battle formation. The Bone Crusher had been repaired and upgraded after the shocking defeat at Mars, its weapons now calibrated to counter the strange human technology that had caught them so unprepared. The alien commander had spent the past 3 months studying every scrap of intelligence about human capabilities. His scientists had analyzed wreckage from destroyed human ships, trying to understand how such primitive beings had developed weapons that could ignore Jacktar shields. His tactical experts had reviewed every battle, looking for patterns they could exploit. What they found was disturbing. The humans did not fight like any other species the Jacktar had encountered. Where other races relied on superior firepower or advanced technology, humans used creativity and unpredictability. They turned their weaknesses into strengths and found ways to make their enemies' advantages work against them. Sub-Commander Crickstal, Vexthal called to his second-in-command, deploy the Death Guard to the forward positions. If these humans want to test themselves against our elite warriors, we will give them that opportunity. The Death Guard were the finest soldiers the Jacktar Empire had ever produced. Each warrior was genetically enhanced beyond normal limits, their bodies capable of surviving in the vacuum of space without protection. Their weapons could cut through solid steel with ease, and their armor had been forged from materials found in the cores of collapsed stars. Crickstal's mandibles clicked with anticipation as he prepared to lead the assault. Commander, our intelligence suggests the humans will attempt another of their swarming attacks. The Death Guard will be ready to counter their tactics. Meanwhile, on the human side of the battlefield, Captain Martinez was coordinating with commanders across the entire fleet through the quantum communication network. General Rodriguez's voice came through clearly from Earth. providing strategic guidance based on real-time intelligence analysis. Martinez, we're seeing massive energy buildups in the alien fleet. They're preparing to deploy some kind of elite force. Prometheus is analyzing their formation patterns now. The artificial intelligence system had been learning and growing throughout the war, its capabilities expanding with each battle. It could now predict Jakhtar tactical decisions with 90% accuracy, allowing human forces to prepare countermeasures before the enemy even began their attacks. Dr. Marcus Webb's quantum weapons had also evolved during the conflict. The new disruptors could now target specific molecular structures, allowing them to disable enemy ships without completely destroying them. This had proven invaluable for gathering intelligence and understanding alien technology. All ships, this is Martinez, the captain announced to her fleet. We're facing their best warriors today. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every human who has ever lived and every human who will ever be born. Today we prove that Earth will never kneel. The battle began with a massive exchange of weapons fire that lit up the asteroid field like a second sun. Jakhtar plasma beams struck human shields while quantum disruptors tore through alien armor. Both sides had learned from their previous encounters, and the fighting was more intense than anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. The Death Guard lived up to their fearsome reputation, their advanced ships cutting through human formations with deadly precision. But the humans adapted quickly, using the asteroids as cover and coordinating their attacks through the Prometheus network in ways that confused and frustrated the alien warriors. Colonel Amy Foster led her fighter squadron in a desperate assault against the Jakhtar command ship. Her small vessels darted between the massive alien dreadnoughts, their adaptive AI systems learning and countering enemy tactics in real time. 3 of her pilots were lost in the first minutes of the engagement, but their sacrifice allowed the rest of the squadron to penetrate the alien defenses. The turning point came when Martinez made a decision that would have been impossible for any other species. Instead of trying to defeat the Jakhtar fleet through superior firepower, she ordered her ships to ram the enemy vessels directly. "All ships initiate collision protocol," she announced calmly. "We're going to use our ships as weapons." The order went against every instinct of self-preservation, but the human crews responded without hesitation. They had trained for this possibility, knowing that their adaptive armor and quantum field generators might allow them to survive impacts that would destroy normal vessels. The Defiance led the charge, accelerating directly toward the Bone Crusher at maximum speed. The 2 massive ships collided in a spectacular explosion that could be seen from Mars, but instead of being destroyed, the human vessel's adaptive hull absorbed the impact and began cutting through the alien ship's armor like a drill through soft earth. Martinez found herself face-to-face with Commander Vexthal in the damaged remains of his command center. Both leaders were injured, their ships crippled, but neither was willing to surrender. The alien commander's armor was cracked, revealing the scaled skin beneath, while Martinez's uniform was torn and bloodied. "This is impossible," Vexthal gasped, his 3 eyes wide with disbelief. "Your ship should have been destroyed. Your species should have surrendered months ago. How can you continue to fight when the odds are so clearly against you?" Martinez leaned against a damaged console, her breathing labored but her voice steady. "Because you made one mistake, Commander. You assumed that being stronger meant you would win. But strength isn't about having the biggest weapons or the most advanced technology. It's about never giving up, no matter how hopeless things seem." The alien commander tried to stand, but his injuries were too severe. "Your species fights like madmen. You sacrifice your own lives without hesitation. You use tactics that make no logical sense. How can we defeat an enemy that refuses to accept?" "Defeat? You can't," Martinez replied simply. "Because we're not fighting to conquer you. We're fighting to survive. And humans will do anything to protect the people they love." Around them, the battle continued to rage, but both leaders knew that something fundamental had changed. The Jakhtar had discovered that their 3,000-year reign of terror was about to end. They had finally encountered a species that would rather die than kneel. As rescue teams from both sides worked to evacuate the damaged command centers, word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. The humans had not just survived another encounter with the Jactar Empire. They had proven that even the most powerful military force in known space could be defeated by courage, creativity, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for freedom. The war was far from over, but everyone knew that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had announced its presence among the stars, and the message was clear: Earth's children would bow to no one. 3 weeks after the devastating battle in the asteroid belt, a single massive ship appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. Unlike the dark, threatening vessels of Commander Vexel's fleet, this ship gleamed like polished silver and moved with the graceful precision of a diplomatic vessel rather than a warship. Empress Zarathul, supreme ruler of the Jactar Empire, had come to Earth not as a conqueror but as a leader seeking to understand how her supposedly invincible forces had been defeated by a species that had only recently discovered. Faster than light travel, the Empress was larger than even Commander Vexthul, her scales shimmering with colors that shifted from deep purple to bright gold as her emotions changed. Unlike her subordinates' bone armor, she wore robes made of a material that seemed to bend light around itself, creating patterns that were both beautiful and impossible to look at directly. She had ruled the Jactar Empire for over 2 centuries, expanding their territory across 47 star systems and bringing dozens of alien species under their control. In all that time, no enemy had ever forced her to consider terms of surrender. The humans had accomplished something that she had believed was impossible. Ambassador Helen Parker waited for the alien Empress in the same space station where the war had begun. The facility had been repaired and modified to serve as neutral ground for peace negotiations. Parker was a former military officer who had served under General Rodriguez before transitioning to diplomatic service. She understood both the language of war and the delicate art of making peace. The ambassador wore a simple blue uniform that represented Earth's unified government, a political entity that had been created during the war when humanity finally put aside their differences to face a common enemy. In her hands she carried a tablet containing the proposed terms for ending the conflict. Commander Vexthul was also present, though his role had changed dramatically since their first meeting. The alien commander was recovering from injuries sustained during his battle with Captain Martinez, and his experience fighting humans had given him insights that his Empress needed to understand. His armor had been replaced with simpler clothing, and the bone ornaments that had once decorated his outfit were gone. The defeat had humbled him in ways that he was still trying to process. For the first time in his long military career, he had encountered an enemy that he could respect. "Empress," Vexthul said as his superior entered the chamber, "the humans await your presence. I should warn you that they are not what our intelligence report suggested. They are far more dangerous than we initially believed." Zarathul's 3 eyes focused on her subordinate with interest. She had read his battle reports, but she wanted to hear his personal assessment of the species that had accomplished the impossible. "Explain," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had ruled an empire for longer than most species had possessed written language. "They do not fight for conquest or resources," Vexthul replied carefully. "They fight for each other. When their ships are damaged, they risk everything to rescue the crews. When their positions are hopeless, they continue fighting anyway. They would rather die than surrender, and they make tactical decisions that no rational species would consider." The Empress listened thoughtfully as her commander described the human approach to warfare. It was unlike anything in Jactar military doctrine, which emphasized overwhelming force, logical tactics, and the preservation of valuable assets. The humans seemed to operate by completely different rules. Ambassador Parker rose as the alien leaders entered the negotiation chamber. She had studied everything humanity had learned about Jactar culture during the war, but this was her first time meeting their supreme ruler. The Empress was even more imposing than she had expected, radiating power and authority that made the air itself seem heavy. Empress Zarathal, Parker said, bowing slightly in what their cultural experts believed was the appropriate gesture of respect. I am Ambassador Helen Parker, representing the people of Earth. We are grateful that you have come to discuss terms for ending this conflict. The alien empress studied the human with the same intensity that a scientist might examine an interesting specimen. Parker was smaller and appeared more fragile than the warriors who had defeated Jacktar fleets, yet she showed no fear in the presence of beings who could tear her apart with their bare hands. Ambassador Parker? Zarathal replied, her translator, rendering the alien words into perfect English. Your species has accomplished something that I believed was impossible. You have defeated the Jacktar Empire in open warfare. I have come to understand how this happened and to determine what terms you require for peace. Parker placed her tablet on the negotiation table and activated the holographic display. The terms she presented were not what anyone would have expected from a victorious species. Instead of demanding tribute or territory, humanity was asking for something much simpler. Earth requests recognition as a sovereign power with full control over our home system, Parker began. We want establishment of trade relations based on mutual benefit rather than subjugation. We ask for sharing of certain technologies that would benefit both our species. Most importantly, we want your empire to withdraw from any plans to conquer or control human colonies. Empress Zarathal's scales shifted to a deep blue color that indicated surprise. These terms were more generous than anything the Jacktar had ever offered to defeated enemies. The humans were not seeking revenge or demanding reparations for the damage caused by the war. These terms are acceptable, the Empress said after studying the proposal. But I must ask why your species is being so generous. You have proven that you can defeat our forces. You could demand much more than this. Ambassador Parker smiled, the expression conveying warmth that the alien leaders found both puzzling and oddly reassuring. Because we're not interested in building an empire, Empress. We just want to be left alone to explore the galaxy and make friends with other species. War is something we do when we have no other choice, not something we enjoy. The negotiations continued for several days as both sides worked out the details of what would become known as the Soul Accords. The agreement established Earth as an independent power and created the framework for peaceful relations between humans and the Jacktar Empire. During one of the breaks in negotiations, Commander Vexthal requested a private meeting with Ambassador Parker. The alien commander had been struggling with questions that had plagued him since his defeat, and he needed answers that only a human could provide. Ambassador, he said, his voice carrying a tone of genuine curiosity rather than the arrogance she remembered from their first encounter. When your Captain Martinez told me to kneel first, I thought it was mere defiance. Now I realize there was deeper meaning behind those words. Can you explain? Parker considered the question carefully before responding. In our culture, Commander, respect is something that must be earned rather than demanded. When you told us that humans would kneel, you were asking us to surrender our dignity without proving that you deserved our submission. Martinez was telling you that if you wanted our respect, you would need to earn it first. The alien commander's mandibles clicked softly as he processed this concept. The Jacktar had always taken respect by force, assuming that superior strength automatically granted superior status. The idea that respect could be given freely based on merit was completely foreign to their culture. Your species fights differently than any we have encountered, Vexthal admitted. You make sacrifices that serve no logical purpose. You risk valuable assets to save individuals who contribute little to the war effort. You continue fighting even when victory is impossible. How do you reconcile these behaviors with military efficiency? Because the individuals are the reason we fight in the first place, Parker replied. What good is military efficiency if it means abandoning the people we're trying to protect? Our strength doesn't come from our weapons or our ships. It comes from knowing that we're all fighting for each other. The Soul Accords were signed 1 week later in a ceremony broadcast across both human and Jacktar territories. Earth was officially recognized as a sovereign power, and both species committed to peaceful coexistence and mutual cooperation. Captain Lisa Martinez, now promoted to Admiral, stood beside Ambassador Parker as they watched the historic signing. The woman who had sparked a war with two simple words had become the symbol of humanity's refusal to bow to superior force. As the ceremony concluded, Empress Zarathil approached the human delegates for a final conversation. Her scales had shifted to a warm golden color that indicated respect and admiration. "Admiral Martinez," the Empress said, "your species has taught the Jactar Empire something valuable today. We have learned that true strength is not measured in weapons or conquests, but in the willingness to stand up for what you believe is right. The galaxy is fortunate to have such warriors protecting the innocent." Martinez smiled and extended her hand in the human gesture of friendship. "Thank you, Empress. We look forward to exploring the stars together as allies rather than enemies." The war that had begun with a demand for submission ended with mutual respect and the promise of cooperation. Humanity had earned its place among the galactic community,